Deus Ex Human Revolution was released in late 2011 and of course is the third installment into the Deus Ex action RPG franchise. The game received critical acclaim for its satisfying strategic combat combined with deeply atmospheric environments and twisting conspiracy-ridden story. These are the many reasons yours truly also enjoyed the experience, but my most beloved feature the game boasted was its adherence to the concept of freedom. The ability to tackle a given situation in any manner the player saw fit was what I found deeply refreshing in a gaming climate filled to the brim of titles that hold your hand through a linear succession of predictable rigid set pieces. Here's the thing though, while Human Revolution was one of the best received games of the last year, its flaws didn't escape the attention of mainstream criticism. While games like Uncharted 3, Skyrim and Zelda Skyward Sword got a free pass for having flaws not big enough for the simplistic analysis of most journalists to dissect, Human Revolution's more visible flaws had made it a supposedly inferior title to these other games. Personally, I'd much rather play a game that while having some issues made up for it by offering features not seen much in the current industry than a title that is simply happy to repeat a previous game's formula. Some might argue that some of the more critically acclaimed titles of last year did have some crippling flaws that modern critics simply aren't used to analysing and some gamers are just too blind to see, but that's kind of getting into a completely different topic. Now you might be wondering why I would be making a video on Human Revolution's flaws if I get so up in arms about people using them as a way to justify their status as professional reviewers. Well, because I found the third Deus Ex title to be the closest thing to an excellent game I've played in a long time and would like to delineate why fixing some of its problems could have made it a near-perfect title, while being in an isolated environment that doesn't make me tackle these issues like a petty critic who's simply trying to poorly justify why Deus Ex isn't worthy of a Game of the Year nomination other than because it's not mainstream enough or that there wasn't enough backdoor advertisement money getting fed through to the higher-ups. Anyway, let's get started. I will be talking about some of the events that happen later in the story throughout this video, so if you haven't given this title a go yet, then by all means return later once you have, as there may be some minor spoilers on the horizon. I'd like to start by talking about something which has become a bit of a taboo subject amongst mainstream game criticism. It's the subject of loading times. It seems that a lot of people have just kind of accepted long loading times as a necessary evil and completely ignored it when it comes to discussing the pros and cons of a title. Why is this though? Loading times can create jarring disconnects or severely break immersion. I remember not too long ago games like Metroid Prime and Jak and Daxter were praised for their abilities to mask loading times while still displaying huge open 3D worlds. But bringing it up in the modern age makes me sound like a major nitpicker. This is probably a very minor problem I guess, but it has to be said, this game loads quite a bit. I'm not naive enough to think that you can just magic these things away. I mean, after all, this is a beautiful looking game, so of course it needs to manage its resources. But I've seen games that one way or another have gotten around these ghastly screens. The result of all these little delays is that it makes each environment, instead of feeling sprawling and open, feel more like cramped little cut-off boxes. My time on this Earth is a short one, so whenever I die and get sent to the loading screen, I'm more than likely gonna hit up my email. Something I really don't want to be doing while playing a great game like this. Loading screens are a problem with plenty of games, not just Deus Ex 3. I mean, believe me, I've played titles a lot more offensive in this category. But with a game as intoxicating as this, they stand out, and selfish little me would gladly like to see them eliminated from the experience. Now, to tackle an issue I think every critic of this game goes over at some point, the much-loathed boss fights. Now, putting to one side the fact that these things were outsourced to people who weren't even very familiar with Deus Ex, I can still see what was trying to be achieved here. Adam Jensen is a badass, so obviously you want some epic climatic confrontations for him to take part in. Here's the major problem. It doesn't matter how quote-unquote epic you make these fights. If we don't know these villains, there's very little reward in seeing them bite the dust. A great boss fight is only taken to the next level of awesome when the villain in question is one the player truly resents and wants to see defeated. We know barely anything about these guys, aside from the fact they were involved in the incident that takes place at the start of the game. Their motivations and personalities remain a complete mystery, so no real connection can be established with them. They might as well just be regular grunts with some extra abilities. Come to think of it, that's kind of what they are. Oh, and let's not forget, these bosses can be extremely hard to defeat if you haven't chosen offensive abilities to upgrade. The fact that there's no option to confront these guys in any other manner than offensive takedown juxtaposes terribly with the rest of the game's keen sense for freedom and choice. Day's final pet peeve will be with the game's ending. No, not the final choice. I actually quite like the question it ponders at the end, as the option you take kind of reflects the kind of person you are. No, I'm talking about the final level itself. While playing Human Revolution, I was trying to be as resourceful as possible, saving my most powerful weapons and tools until later down the road where I would really need them. The thing is, I never did need them. The last level is a total joke. Instead of being a culmination of everything learned so far while bringing the game to a close with a climactic, challenging final mission, instead it's a rather simplistic level. The objectives are very straightforward and the enemies are barely even a threat, being easily avoided without even the use of weaponry. A lot of games fall into this trap, and it's sad to see Deus Ex commit the same misstep. The earlier missions are pulse-pounding tests of your abilities that result in an extremely satisfying sensation upon completion. The final level should have topped these great little experiences off with a rich and complex culmination, but was simply a cop-out. The less said about the final boss, the better. It falls into the same traps the others did, only with the extra issue of it being beaten by simply standing in a corner for 5 minutes. Well, that's all I have to say for now. While I still love Deus Ex Human Revolution, these things are probably what keep it from coming close to being a classic of this age for me. If Eidos Montreal can fix these issues in a future installment, I think we'll be in for one hell of a treat.